filthy and forgotten in the alley. The sky above the alien city was dark and cloudy. Neon signs flickered across the wet streets. Trash floated in puddles. The air smelled of smoke and something rotten. People passed by without looking at each other. Jackson, a human man in his late 20s, walked through the narrow alley alone. He had just finished his long shift at the factory. His boots splashed in the dirty water. His shoulders were heavy from work, but something made him stop. He heard whispers and laughter. It was coming from around the corner. Curious, Jackson turned slowly. What he saw made him freeze. A group of alien locals had formed a circle. Some were laughing. Others looked disgusted. In the middle of that circle, lying on the ground like trash, was a small alien girl. She was thin, covered in mud, with torn clothes barely hanging from her body. Her skin was a strange grayish color. No one could tell what her original color was anymore. Her hair was tangled and full of dirt. One of her eyes was swollen shut. She didn't fight back. She didn't even cry. The aliens threw leftover food at her. One kicked an empty can. Another spit near her face. Everyone kept their distance as if she carried some kind of disease. "She's disgusting," one alien muttered. "She stinks. Maybe she touched a corpse. No one should go near her." Jackson couldn't move. Something inside him twisted. He looked at her again. She didn't look dangerous. She looked broken, forgotten. Then, she opened her one good eye and looked right at him. That look hit him like a punch to the chest. There was no anger in her eye, no fear, just silence and pain. For a moment, the world around him faded. Jackson walked forward, through the crowd. "Hey!" someone shouted. "What are you doing?" "Don't touch her, human. She's cursed." But Jackson didn't stop. He knelt beside the girl. Her body trembled. She flinched as he reached for her. Carefully, gently, he removed his coat and wrapped it around her. She looked confused, like no one had ever done that for her before. "I've got you," Jackson said softly. Then he picked her up in his arms. The crowd gasped. "Is he insane? He'll be infected." "Humans are disgusting too." Jackson didn't answer. He held the girl close even though she was cold and wet and smelled like the alley itself. Her tiny hands clutched his coat. She didn't say a word. He walked out of the alley with her in his arms. The alien stepped away like he was carrying a bomb. He kept walking, eyes forward. A few minutes later, he reached his small apartment. It wasn't fancy. Just one room, a bed, a table, and a small bathroom. But it was warm. And it was clean. He placed her on the bed. She looked around slowly, still shaking. She didn't ask questions. She didn't even seem to believe this was real. Jackson took out a fresh towel and a clean set of old clothes he had. Then he turned on the shower in the bathroom. Hot steam filled the air. He looked at her again. "You need this," he said gently. "I won't look, I promise, but you need to wash. You're safe here." She still didn't speak, but after a moment she slowly stood up. She was weak and wobbly, but she walked toward the bathroom. Jackson waited outside the door. He could hear the water running. After a while, he heard something else, crying, not loud, not wild, just soft, quiet sobs, like a child who hadn't cried in years because no one had ever cared before. Jackson closed his eyes and leaned back against the wall. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know where she came from. But one thing was clear. She didn't deserve what they did to her. And now he wasn't going to let her be alone again. Not tonight. Not ever again. A hot shower, a hidden secret. Steam curled up from the small bathroom, wrapping the room in warmth. Jackson sat quietly on the edge of his bed, hands resting on his knees, listening to the sound of running water. The girl was still inside. It had been almost 30 minutes. He didn't rush her. But something felt strange. Not wrong. Just different. He had helped injured strangers before, but this was something else. The moment he touched her, It felt like a soft, electric charge ran through his skin. It wasn't painful, just unusual. Her skin had felt rough at first, but under the mud, he thought he'd seen something glow. Maybe it was just his imagination. Then the bathroom door creaked open. Jackson stood up quickly and turned around, just as the girl stepped out. She was wearing one of his long shirts, clean and dry. Now, her hair, once a filthy mess, now hung wet and dark down her back. Her skin was pale silver with soft glowing marks across her arms and collarbone, like tiny galaxies moving under her skin. She wasn't just clean. She looked like a being from a forgotten legend. Jackson stared, shocked. He had seen many alien species before, but none looked like this. Not even close. The girl froze in place. She saw his expression and quickly looked away, wrapping her arms over her glowing skin like she was ashamed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Her voice was soft, shaky. No, it's okay," Jackson said quickly, raising his hands. "I'm not scared, just surprised." She nodded slowly but didn't meet his eyes. She sat on the floor near the wall, pulling her knees to her chest. Her wet hair stuck to her cheeks. "I'm Rhea," she said after a long silence. "Jackson," he replied. "Do you want something to eat?" She nodded once. He handed her a simple food bar and a cup of warm broth. She sipped quietly. He didn't ask many questions. She looked like someone who'd had too many questions thrown at her already. But after a while she spoke again. "They all say I'm dirty, untouchable, dangerous." Jackson leaned against the wall, sitting down across from her. "You don't look dangerous to me," he said. Rhea looked up at him, her eyes a pale lavender that shimmered slightly in the dim light. Her cheeks were marked with faint silver lines, almost like scars but beautiful in their own way. "It's not just dirt," she whispered. "It's inside me. Something I can't control." Jackson frowned. "What do you mean?" She looked down at her arms. The glowing marks had started to fade like moonlight slipping behind clouds. My people call it the veil curse. When I was born, I glowed. They said I was wrong, cursed. My family tried to hide it, but when I turned 10, I started glowing in my sleep. What happened then? They threw me out. Silence hung heavy in the room. Jackson didn't know what to say. What kind of civilization would cast out a child for glowing skin? Rhea continued, her voice barely a whisper. They said anyone who touches me will be marked, that my glow will spread and curse others. Jackson looked at his own hands. He had touched her skin more than once. "I feel fine," he said calmly. "You will?" "For now," she said, closing her eyes. "The bond takes time." "Bond?" She opened her eyes again. "The first one to help me always starts the bond. That's why no one helps. They're afraid. The glow connects. I don't know what happens after that." Jackson blinked. This was getting stranger than he expected. He tried to stay calm. "Then we'll figure it out together," he said. "If I'm marked, then I'm marked. I'm not leaving you." Rhea looked at him like he had just said something impossible. "No one ever says that," she said. "Not after they see my skin." Jackson smiled a little. "Well, I guess humans are stubborn." She actually smiled back, just a little. It was a tired, quiet smile, but it was real. He stood up. "You can sleep here. I'll take the floor." She nodded again. As Jackson turned off the lights and lay down with a blanket on the floor, Rhea whispered in the darkness, "You're not afraid now, but the glow changes people." Jackson didn't reply. He lay there quietly, wondering what she meant. Outside, the city was silent, but deep inside Rhea's skin, something shimmered softly, something ancient, something unknown. And Jackson had just taken the first step into a mystery much larger than he ever expected. The next morning, Jackson woke to the smell of something warm, like spices and flowers, and the sound of humming. For a moment he thought he was dreaming. His small apartment had never smelled like anything pleasant before. Then he sat up and saw Rhea sitting near the window. Sunlight streamed in, hitting her face. Her glowing skin shimmered in the morning light like living crystal. The strange patterns on her arms had returned, more visible now in the daylight. She wasn't hiding them anymore. She turned and smiled. "Good morning, Jackson." That was the first time she said his name. He blinked. "Morning. You look different today." "I feel different," she said. "Like the dirt is finally gone. Like I'm breathing real air for the first time." She stood and walked toward him. Her steps were light, almost silent. Her hair was dry now, falling straight behind her shoulders, like silver black silk. "I want to tell you everything," she said quietly. Jackson sat up straighter. "I'm listening." Rhea sat on the floor across from him and took a deep breath. "My name is Rhea Varel. I come from the house of Kirena. My mother was High Priestess of the Inner Light. My father was the commander of the Third War Fleet." Jackson raised his eyebrows. "Your royalty?" She nodded slowly. "I was. Until they saw what I was." She looked down at her arms. The glowing lines pulsed gently. "I wasn't supposed to glow. My family's bloodline is pure, but I was born different. They called it a mutation. They said I carried the old light, a forgotten force from before recorded time." Jackson frowned. "Is it dangerous?" "Maybe. Maybe not. They never let me find out. On my 7th birthday, they began testing me. On my 10th, they locked me away. And when I turned 15, they left me in the wastelands. Alone." Jackson felt anger rise in his chest. "They left you because of your birth?" Rhea nodded again. "I wandered. I begged, I hid, but every time someone saw me glow, they ran or attacked me. I've been running for 2 years now." Jackson leaned forward, his voice steady. "But why were the city guards looking for you last night?" Rhea hesitated. "That's the part I didn't tell you." She stood and walked to the table. From her sleeve, she pulled out a small device. Metal, old, covered in scratches. Jackson had seen tech like it before. It looked like a tracker, but this one was different. It hummed faintly in his direction. "They're tracking me because I didn't just glow. I activated something." "What kind of something?" She placed the device on the table. With a press, a blue hologram appeared, shaky, full of static. It showed an ancient temple. Inside, a glowing orb hovered above a stone pedestal. "I touched that orb," she said. "It responded to my blood. And then it disappeared." "Disappeared where?" She pointed at her chest. "In me." Jackson's mouth fell slightly open. "You have ancient alien tech inside your body?" She nodded. "That's why they're after me. Not because I'm cursed, but because I'm holding something powerful. And they want it." Jackson stood slowly. "Then why not just give it to them? Wouldn't they leave you alone?" Rhea's face turned cold. "No, they wouldn't let me live." The air in the room suddenly felt heavier. She looked out the window. "They're probably already scanning for the orb's signal. I tried to block it, but I don't know how long that will last." "And what about the bond?" Jackson asked. Rhea looked at him again, more serious now. "Because you touched me while the orb was inside me. A link formed. If they find you, they'll take you too. You're part of this now." Jackson let out a slow breath. "So what do we do?" Her glowing eyes locked with his. "We run. No plan?" "Not yet." He smiled. "Then we'll make one." She stared at him. "Why are you helping me? Really?" Jackson shrugged. "Maybe I'm cursed too. Or maybe I just don't believe in letting people like you be treated like trash." Rhea's eyes softened. "You're not like the others." Suddenly, the lights in the apartment flickered. A sharp beep came from the tracker on the table. Rhea's smile faded. "They found me." Jackson grabbed his jacket and looked out the window. 3 tall figures in black armor were already walking down the alley outside. "Come on," he said. "We're leaving." Rhea didn't hesitate. She grabbed the tracker, tucked it into her sleeve, and followed him toward the back door. Behind them, the door buzzed. Someone was trying to unlock it remotely. But by the time it clicked open, the room was empty. The girl who glowed had vanished again, and now the hunt had truly begun. The city was split in 2. One part was the clean zone, a glowing paradise of polished towers, flying vehicles, and rich aliens dressed in shiny robes. The other part was the lower side, dark streets, broken tech, and those who had nowhere else to go. The clean zone had rules: guards, drones, fingerprint checks, and one more thing: no one glowing was allowed in. Rhea and Jackson were glowing. Jackson led her through a tight corridor between 2 buildings. The sirens had started. The signal from the ancient tracker must have gone live again. Rhea's hands trembled as she pulled her long sleeves over her arms, trying to hide the light. "They'll scan us," she whispered. "The guards will know." "We'll go through the underground," Jackson said. "There's a tunnel beneath the recycler yard. It's old, but it's forgotten." Rhea followed him without hesitation. Her feet were bare, but she didn't complain. Each step echoed off the metal walls, bouncing in the silence like footsteps from a memory. When they reached the recycler yard, Jackson lifted a metal grate. A gust of hot air rushed up, carrying the stench of old machinery and oil. "After you," he said. She climbed down first. Then he followed. The tunnel below was dark, lit only by Rhea's faint glow. Her skin shimmered gently, making her look like a spirit walking through a graveyard of steel. "How long have you known about this place?" she asked. "I used to hide here as a kid," Jackson replied. "When I got beat up. When I felt useless. Down here no one cared who you were." Rhea stopped walking. "That's how I feel everywhere." He turned to look at her. She was staring at the wall, tears silently rolling down her cheeks. "They say I'm cursed," she said softly. "But I was born this way. I didn't ask to shine. I didn't ask to be different." Jackson stepped close. "You're not cursed. You're rare, and rare things scare people." Rhea sniffed, wiped her face, and nodded. "Let's keep moving." After an hour of walking, they reached a rusted ladder. It led to a broken maintenance door at the border of the clean zone. Jackson climbed up first. He opened the door just a little, and froze. 2 patrol bots hovered outside, scanning the street. He climbed down again. "They're already watching. The exit. We'll need a distraction." Rhea looked at her hands. "I can try something. I don't know if it'll work." "What?" She reached out and touched his chest. At first, nothing happened. Then Jackson's eyes widened. His skin tingled. A soft glow began spreading from where she touched him, slowly covering his arms, then his neck. "Rhea, what are you doing?" "I'm giving you a piece of the light," she whispered. "If you glow too, they won't know who to chase. But what if—" Before he could finish, a low growl echoed from below. Jackson turned sharply. Behind them, down the tunnel, shadows were moving. Rhea's voice was sharp. "Something's down here." A group of creatures emerged. Twisted figures. Part machine, part flesh. Their eyes burned red. Their claws clicked against the floor. "Scavengers," Jackson said. "They live in the dark and they smell heat." They had no choice now. "Run!" Jackson grabbed Rhea's hand and they climbed the ladder fast. Jackson kicked the door open, and they jumped into the street. The bots turned at once. "Unauthorized." "Presence detected." Rhea raised her hand. A wave of light exploded from her palm. Not fire, not electricity, just pure light. The bots froze, confused, their sensors going blind for a moment. Jackson pulled her into a delivery truck nearby. The driver was asleep in the front seat. Jackson hotwired the engine, something he had learned during his rougher years. The truck started. He hit the pedal. Behind them, the scavengers crawled out into the light, and the bots opened fire. Chaos explosions rocked the street, but Jackson drove through it all. "Where are we going?" Raya shouted. To someone who might know what's inside you, he replied. Someone who understands ancient light. Who? A historian, old alien guy, lives in the dustlands beyond the city. Raya nodded. She looked down at her hand. Her glow was still soft, but something inside her had changed. She didn't feel scared anymore. For the first time, she felt awake. As they reached the outer gates of the clean zone, Jackson saw the guards ahead. He slammed the brakes. We can't go through them. Raya looked around and pointed. There's a garbage chute. It leads to the desert drains. Jackson smirked. You sure? No, she said. But I'm tired of running in circles. They ditched the truck, ran through a side alley, and climbed into the chute. It was slimy. It smelled like rot, but after 5 minutes of sliding, they landed in open desert. Stars above, wind blowing, and silence. Jackson looked around. We made it. Raya smiled, even with sand in her hair. Then let's go find your historian. As they walked into the dustlands, her glow lit the path before them, no longer dirty, no longer forgotten. Now, a girl with power, and a human who refused to let go. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction. Sandstorms rolled like slow waves, under a pink and gold sky. Raya's glow was faint beneath her cloak, and Jackson's boots sank into the shifting dunes as they walked toward the old ruins where the historian lived. They were tired, hungry, and watched. They didn't know it yet, but someone had been following them since they left the clean zone. Not a soldier, not a drone, something worse, a bounty hunter. Jackson spotted the ruins first, half-buried stone towers, cracked domes, and a strange blue light flickering through the broken entrance. That's it, he said. Raya nodded, but her eyes narrowed. Something's wrong. They stepped carefully through the shattered hallway of the ancient outpost. The air was still, heavy with dust. Broken statues lined the walls, all carved with strange glowing patterns, the same kind Raya had on her skin. Then, a voice echoed from the shadows. You brought her here. Jackson turned instantly, pulling out his makeshift blaster. From the darkness, a tall figure stepped forward. Armor made from desert bones and black metal, a long plasma rifle hung at his side, and across his chest, dozens of alien trophies dangled. Teeth, claws, badges, and worse. I knew someone would try to protect her, the hunter growled. I just didn't expect it to be a human. Raya stood behind Jackson. Her face was calm, but her hands were glowing again. Jackson raised his weapon. Back off, the bounty hunter laughed. I could kill you both before you blink, but I won't. I've got a better deal. He reached into his belt and pulled out a hologram cube. With a click, an image appeared in midair. Raya's face. A number below it. 10 million credits. Jackson's jaw tightened. The hunter turned to Raya. I don't care about your curse, girl. I don't care what you're carrying. I just want the money. You can come quietly, or he can die here. Raya didn't flinch. You'd kill for credits? The bounty hunter smirked. I've killed for less. He looked at Jackson again. You helped her, fine, you did your good deed, now get out of my way. Jackson didn't move. No. The air grew still. The bounty hunter raised his rifle. Then everything happened fast. He fired. Raya screamed. Jackson dove to the side, the blast grazing his shoulder. He hit the floor hard, pain surging through his body. But the hunter didn't fire again, because Raya had stepped forward, and her glow exploded. The ancient markings on the walls responded to her light. The statues cracked, the air vibrated. The bounty hunter stared in shock as Raya lifted her hand, and his rifle melted in his grip. What are you doing? He shouted. I don't know, she said. But it's not yours anymore. The floor shook. Glowing dust rose into the air like fireflies. Raya's feet lifted off the ground just an inch. She didn't look cursed now. She looked divine. The bounty hunter dropped to his knees, eyes wide. Please! I didn't know. Then everything went quiet. Rhea fell, to her knees gasping, and the light faded. The hunter dropped his head, knocked out cold. Jackson rushed to her side. "Are you okay?" She nodded weakly. "I used too much, I didn't mean to." He helped her sit against the wall. "Whatever that was," Jackson said, "he's not chasing us anymore." Rhea gave a tired smile. "That's something." Just then, a gentle voice came from the hallway behind them. "I've waited a long time to see that light again." They turned. An old alien, short and covered in dust-colored robes, stepped forward. His eyes glowed softly blue. "You must be the girl who carries the orb," he said. "And you," he looked at Jackson, "must be the one she bonded with." Rhea tried to stand. "Are you the historian?" The old alien nodded. "I am Zephyr, keeper of the forgotten stars. Come, you both have much to learn, and little time." They entered a small chamber deep inside the ruins. Zephyr lit a crystal lantern and sat on a stone bench. "The orb you carry is not a curse," he said to Rhea. "It's a memory, a piece of something ancient that remembers everything it touches." Rhea's voice was soft. "Why me?" "Because your blood holds a forgotten path, one that was hidden long ago. You are a key to waking something sleeping beneath this galaxy." Jackson leaned in. "What kind of something?" Zephyr's eyes narrowed. "Something that will either save us or destroy us." He looked at both of them. "And the bond between you two, Rhea's glow in your veins, means you're now part of this, Jackson. Both of you are now being hunted not just for power, but for what you might become." Rhea's eyes widened. "Then, what do we do?" Zephyr placed an old map on the table. It glowed with strange lines forming a star-shaped path. "You must travel to the Temple of Hollow Suns. There the orb will unlock fully. But be warned, those who fear your light will try to stop you at any cost." Jackson looked at Rhea. She wasn't just a glowing girl anymore, she was a fuse, and the galaxy was full of matches. The stars above the desert ruins shimmered like scattered diamonds. Jackson sat beside a low fire, holding his arm, still aching from the bounty hunter's blast. Rhea sat across from him, her knees pulled to her chest, eyes staring into the flames. The warmth of her glow had faded, but her presence still felt powerful. Different. Zephyr, the old alien historian, stood nearby, studying an ancient scroll carved into crystal slabs. The wind outside howled softly, as if the desert itself was whispering secrets. Finally, Zephyr turned. "It's time," he said. Rhea looked up. "Time for what?" "To learn who you truly are." Inside a dark chamber beneath the ruins, the walls were covered in glowing symbols, swirling shapes, suns, stars, and ancient runes. A massive round mirror stood at the center, cracked, but still humming with energy. Zephyr motioned for Rhea to step forward. "This mirror is not for seeing your face," he said. "It shows your origin, your bloodline, and your destiny." Rhea glanced at Jackson. He nodded. "I'm with you." She stepped forward. The moment she touched the mirror's edge, the room was filled with blinding light. Symbols from the wall lifted into the air and circled her. Her skin glowed brighter than ever before. Then, images appeared inside the mirror. Not memories. Not dreams. History. 1,000 years ago, a race called the Zareth Isle ruled the stars. They were beings of light and thought, peaceful but powerful. They protected weaker worlds and sealed away dangerous tech, like the very orb now hidden inside Rhea. The Zareth Isle believed in balance, but some among them grew greedy, wanting to use their light to control, not protect. A civil war broke out. The ancient ones vanished, their bloodlines scattered, hidden among many species. Rhea was one of them, a direct descendant. The light in her was not a curse. It was a forgotten inheritance. When the vision ended, Rhea fell to her knees, breathing hard. Tears ran down her cheeks. "I'm one of them?" she whispered. Zephyr nodded slowly. "Yes, That's why the orb chose you. You are a child of light. Your glow is not sickness, it is your birthright. But my people, my family, they threw me away. They were afraid, Zephyr said gently. When truth is powerful, those with weak hearts always fear it. Jackson stepped forward, placing a hand on Rhea's shoulder. They didn't deserve you anyway. Rhea looked up at him. Then why do I feel so lost? Because the truth is heavy, Zephyr said. But now that you know it, you can choose what to do with it. Rhea stood slowly. Her glow was steadier now, controlled, no longer wild. What happens if I unlock the orb? She asked. Zephyr's eyes turned serious. You awaken the beacon, a signal to others like you, scattered across the galaxy. You will bring them hope, but also bring enemies, Jackson asked. Enemies like who? Zephyr pointed to the sky. The Void-born Ascendancy, a shadow empire. They destroyed the last Temple of Light centuries ago. If they know Rhea is alive, they will come. Rhea clenched her fists. Then, let them come. Zephyr stepped closer. You must go to the Temple of Hollow Suns. It's hidden beneath the dead oceans of planet Erindros. Only there can the orb inside you be fully released. And if I don't? She asked. The light will consume you, Zephyr warned. It was never meant to stay locked inside one body forever. Jackson turned to Rhea. Then we go to Erindros. Zephyr placed a hand on Rhea's forehead. Her glow pulsed as if responding. To his touch, your blood carries the map. The stars will lead you. That night, Rhea sat alone outside the ruins. Jackson walked out to her holding 2 mugs of warmed liquid ration. You okay? He asked. She took the mug. I don't know. I spent my whole life thinking I was broken. And now I find out I'm part of something ancient, something bigger. He sat beside her. You're not broken. You were never broken. She glanced sideways at him. You've seen me cry, glow, nearly explode, and you still stay. Jackson smiled. Yeah, because I don't care about what's glowing on the outside. I care about the girl who fed a stray dog when she had no food, herself, who shared her blanket with a stranger, who still wants to protect people even after the galaxy threw her away. Rhea's eyes softened. You say that like you know me. I'm getting there, he said. She leaned against his shoulder just a little. The stars above shimmered silently. Somewhere out there, war was coming. But for this moment, the child of light and the stubborn human sat side by side, no longer alone. Rhea stood at the edge of the landing dock, her cloak billowing in the wind. Behind her, the old desert ruins were silent, like a forgotten ghost. Ahead of her, the stolen ship Jackson had repaired hummed softly, ready to fly. But this time, she wasn't running. She was returning, to the world that once cursed her, to the empire that called her dirty, cursed, unworthy, to show them all who she really was. The ship tore through hyperspace, stars stretching into light trails outside the windows. Jackson sat at the controls, focused but calm. Rhea sat beside him, holding the star map Zephyr had given them. Planet Erindros, she whispered. The Temple of Hollow Suns is there, beneath its oceans. The orb will awaken. Then we wake it, Jackson said. They shared a look. No fear, no doubts, just trust. They reached Erindros hours later, but the planet was not what the map had promised. It was dead. The oceans had long dried up, leaving behind cracked salt fields and storm-covered skies. The air was filled with static and broken structures, jutted from the land like bones of forgotten giants. Still, Rhea stepped out onto the surface and closed her eyes. I feel it, she whispered. It's calling me. They followed the call across the empty land. Finally, they reached a vast crater. At its center, a black spire pierced the sky like a sword. The Temple of Hollow Suns. The entrance glowed faintly as Rhea approached. Her markings lit up, responding to the ancient energy. The stone door slid open with a deep rumble. Inside, the air was thick with power. The walls pulsed with soft light, showing old carvings, tales of the Zarathael, their fall and their hope, to one day rise again. Rhea walked to the center of the temple. There stood a pedestal, and above it floated the final seal, a sphere of starlight gently spinning. Her skin glowed brighter. The orb inside her pulsed. Her chest burned, but it wasn't pain. It was awakening. She stepped forward, but just as she reached out her hand, boom! The ground shook. Explosions echoed behind them. Jackson turned sharply. "We're not alone." Out of the shadows, black-armored ships descended. Troops in bone-white helmets stormed the temple. At their front walked a tall figure cloaked in void steel, Commander Valen of the Voidborn Ascendancy. "I was told a dirty girl had a toy," he said coldly. "I didn't expect her to still be breathing." Jackson raised his blaster. "You're too late," but Valen only laughed. "The light belongs to the past. The future is mine." He raised a hand, and Rhea screamed. Her body was being pulled forward. The orb inside her tried to escape. The energy pulled at her chest like a magnet, tearing her apart. Jackson fired. Chaos exploded. The temple lit up with gunfire and light blasts. Troops scattered. The ground cracked. Rhea collapsed to her knees, the orb screaming in her mind. "You must choose." A voice echoed inside her. It wasn't Jackson. It wasn't Valen. It was the orb. Surrender or rise. Jackson saw Rhea on the floor, struggling to breathe. He charged toward her, but a trooper tackled him to the ground. They fought hand to hand, rolling across the floor until Jackson headbutted the soldier and crawled to Rhea's side. "Rhea, you have to fight it. I can't." "You can. You're not alone anymore." She opened her eyes and saw him glowing too. His veins shimmered with her light. The bond wasn't a curse. It was shared strength. Rhea screamed, not in fear but in power. Light burst from her chest, shattering the orb from within. The fragments flew upward, forming rings of energy above the temple. Valen screamed, trying to stop it, but his armor began to melt under the pressure of her energy. The temple exploded with brightness. The symbols on the walls lifted into the air, spiraling around Rhea like a crown. She rose into the air, floating, shining like a star reborn. "I am Rhea Virel, daughter of the Zarathael," she said, her voice layered with 1,000 ancient echoes, "and I am not yours to control." She opened her hands, and the light surged out, blasting Valen and his army backward like leaves in a storm. One by one, his ships malfunctioned and dropped to the ground. His troopers fled, and then there was silence. Rhea slowly floated down, her feet touching the ground. Her glow dimmed but didn't disappear. Jackson rushed to her side and caught her before she fell. "I'm okay," she whispered. I did it." He smiled, eyes wide. "You didn't just wake the orb, you became it." They looked around. The temple was still standing, but now the floor had changed. A new map had appeared, star systems across the galaxy, some marked in gold. Rhea's hands trembled as she touched one of the golden stars. "They're calling back," she said softly. "Others, like me. They're still out there." Jackson grinned. "Then it's time to find them." Days later, Rhea stood before a galactic broadcast station on a peaceful moon. News feeds were still recovering from the shock, void-born forces retreating from Arindros, their command ships mysteriously disabled. Rhea stepped in front of the camera. Her markings were visible, her voice was calm. "I was called dirty, cursed, untouchable," she said. "They threw me away like garbage, but I survived and I learned the truth." She looked straight into the lens. "There is light in us that no one can erase. We are not mistakes. We are miracles. And if you're out there, hiding, afraid, come home. The galaxy needs you." As her speech echoed across systems, change began. Old powers trembled, new rebellions sparked, and on forgotten worlds, other glowing children lifted their heads in hope for the first time. Later that night, Rhea sat with Jackson under the stars. "You didn't have to help me," she said. I didn't do it because I had to, he replied. I did it because no, one should be left in the dirt. She leaned into him. The girl they all feared was now the symbol of a new age, and the human who saw her worth had become her anchor. The galaxy had tried to bury her, but instead, it had planted her. And now, she bloomed.